Cool.
Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. I'm Matthew Whitby, and this is a podcast where I am joined by the amazing creators of the DMs Guild, and I can't think of anyone else amazing other than Jimmy Merritt. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Nice, yeah, no, it's I like that. It's I think what's kind of cool that I like about these podcasts sometimes is I've kind of been inviting people who I've worked with before. And even though we've worked on like one or two projects together, this is the first time of us sort of like speaking and chatting. And it's
That's
weird
right,
to sort
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of weird to sort of see. It's like, oh yeah, no, we've worked on like, is it two things together now? In this case of like, oh yeah, no, we also like are people instead of just words.
Yeah. Maybe like 1.5 things since that one collapsed.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah. Yeah. But there's room for things in the future. But no.
Yeah.
So I guess for the people listening, who may not be as aware of the sort of things that you work on, what sort of products are you particularly known for?
I guess I'm probably best known for Here's to Crime, which is a kind of house rule hack that took some Blades of the Dark elements and brought it over to 5e to kind of do like Ocean's 11 style heists. And I'm also known for there's an adventure pack called Handful of Heists, which were 5 short heist adventures set in Waterdeep. So I guess I'm just known for books that help players steal things, I guess.
I suppose so do you feel it's kind of nice having like a I guess a niche to call it, to be the heist guy?
It is fun because people will bring me on collaborations because Lorella's like, oh, I'd like a heist here. Oh, let's just get Jimmy.
Yeah.
So in that respect, it's nice. I don't want to only be in that niche. I like doing like other things too, and I'm trying to branch out a lot more.
Because you've also been involved with was it Val on 2 monster hunts now as well?
Yeah, and I love doing the monster hunts with Val because what's great is because that'll be like, I'll write 10 or 20 things for that. So that's a great opportunity to branch out and do more different things and give like a variety of adventures and show that I don't just do heist stuff. I can do some other things too.
So I also imagine, like, again, with the nature of like hunting, the monster hunts and also the heists themselves. I mean, there are like almost like 1,000 different ways to do them. So
Right.
even within this sort of like small, like what people could not necessarily a small topic, but how do you sort of like navigate that sort of flexibility? Or is it more a case of like you like when it came to take, was it a handful of heists, for example? How did you decide what sort of heists you wanted to go for?
A lot of it was it was important to me that there was a variety in it because I think Handful of Heists, it's 5 adventures, and I think if all 5 of them felt the same, it would be, the attitude I think would be, well, why didn't he just write one adventure?
Yeah.
So a lot of it was like thinking of heist movies I've enjoyed, thinking of sequences within heist movies I've enjoyed, what would be fun to play, and just finding, because sometimes a heist is just sneaking through a place and not being seen. Sometimes a heist is pretending you work someplace and then walking out. Sometimes a heist is just kind of directly targeting somebody and it's all social and you're tricking them. And then there's one I even kind of lean into it being like a farce. Where I was like, well, let's play with that heist tension and kind of make a place where funny situations can happen with this tension that's building. Because it's just, if the player is trying to steal something, there's a lot of ways to do that.
Wow, yeah, I think that's kind of it's kind of interesting hearing especially like trying to think of like heist films, and there is like the standard sort of like Ocean's 11s, but then there's always there's Italian Job, and they all have very sort of distinct flavors.
Right. Yeah.
And so the Here's to Crime. So that was your first product on the DMs Guild, wasn't it?
That was my first product. Yeah.
And how long ago is it that you released it now?
About a year and a half or so. It was like September 2018. So.
And so you mentioned as well. So it was a mechanics sort of, I guess. What's it called when you take mechanics from one version or one game to another?
I guess it's usually called a hack. It's like a rules hack.
Fair. And what was the other game? I must admit, I haven't heard the.
Oh, it's Blades in the Dark. It's great. I'm a huge fan of it, and it's another game. It's very storytelling heavy, and it's about other things as well. But the thing in it that I most looped into was like, oh, you can do Ocean's 11 with this. Great.
So I'm curious as well. So how was it? How was the process of taking mechanics from another game and sort of fitting them within 5e?
To me, I love doing it. I do it a lot with my home group because sometimes it's difficult to get my home group to play things that aren't 5e.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, I want to play these other games too. I guess I just need to steal from them. And it feels like I'm playing them now. And it's like these sub-rule systems are a way to kind of trick my players. And they're like, oh, you don't want to play Blades in the Dark. Surprise!
Yeah.
Did play Blades in the Dark.
We've been playing it the whole time.
Got you. It's the twist ending.
No, I must admit, I also want to obviously congratulate you on the huge success that was Here's to Crime, because what is it? It was a mithril seller, and
it's a mithril, yeah.
I looked up the stats beforehand, and what is it? There's only 104 products on them, and that is 0.21% of all the sort of uploads. That's so. I must admit, if you don't mind, sort of. A mithril is, I believe, what is it? Is it 1,000 sales? 5,000 sales?
It's I think it's like, no, 1,000 is platinum. So mithril is when it hit 2,500.
Oh, damn, that's really impressive. People. And how, like I said, how have you felt that sort of like that sort of knowing that there's that much amount of eyes on the product, and clearly people are sort of enjoying it because it's still so highly rated.
Yeah, it feels. I mean, it's mixed feelings because on the one hand, like when you open with a high, it's like, all right, cool, I'm really good at this. But then as other products come out, you compare yourself against yourself, which can be kind of tricky because it's like nobody wants to be a one-hit wonder kind of thing. So now it kind of exists as a challenge. We're like, oh, a bunch of people like that. Can I do it again? Kind of thing.
I suppose it is like I know I feel the same way, that the earlier products and stuff like that, just because you don't necessarily have any sort of comparisons, it's you feel that sort of chase for medals or reviews and stuff like that. But even to say that and stuff like that, I mean, I think, was it your library of products? I think all of them sort of managed to sort of tick a box in terms of getting past. Was it silver as well? So you're getting like a good number of eyes on everything.
Yeah, so far so good. I'm grateful that the audience kind of warmly has received what I'm putting out, because you get nervous because I think sometimes you feel like, well, I'm not like a big name, so no one's really going to look at it. But I think the audience has kind of showed like, oh, you can just jump in, and if you're doing something people find interesting, they're not going to discount it just because they don't necessarily know who you are.
Yeah,
which is that was also encouraging up front, because it was like, oh, I don't need to really build a name if I can put out something interesting and people will check it out.
Yeah. So I guess building from that then, so when it comes to actually creating a product then, so outside of the sort of collaborations, what exactly is your creative process? So where does the core of your ideas sort of start?
It's a mix of a few things. Like sometimes it is something I've created for my table, which is what Here's to Crime was. Here's to Crime was just, I wanted to run some version of Blades in the Dark for my 5e friends, and then I posted it around, and some other people told me I should sell it. Like, all right, cool, let's patch it up and sell it. And there's another product I'm working on that's also that, where like I wanted to run a Mad Max campaign kind of scenario for my friends.
Yeah.
I ran it, it was more like Wacky Races.
Okay.
And I was like, well, that's not a thing. So I'm working on kind of that on the side too. And then I also like to treat the new product announcements kind of like a writer's prompt a little bit. Like when Saltmarsh came out, it's like, all right, cool. It might be fun to write a pirate thing. Let's write a pirate thing and see where that goes. And then from that I developed Shanty of Oldbeard's Pride, which doesn't really tie into Saltmarsh other than it's pirate themed. But
I mean, that's got all the connection you need. And was it, if I remember correctly, you kind of went above and beyond and actually included a shanty in.
I did. I was like, you know what? It was because I was writing the adventure. I was like, well, it's kind of about a song, and the song sends them on the adventure. I could write a song, but wouldn't it be kind of fun if they had something to listen to? So I called up a Renaissance Festival performer and was like, hey, can you write a song about this pirate ship that these players would kind of listen to in a tavern?
Yeah.
And we did. And I think it's a fun thing. I think it's a fun little bonus that I
No,
hope
I must
can.
admit, I think anything that you can sort of bring to the table that sort of helps that sort of level of immersion, and
Mhm.
it's the sort of like most, again, think of it. I can't think of any other sort of like DMsGuild products that sort of brings audio to the table, and it
Yeah,
instantly
I
sort of
think.
creates that sort of memorable moment.
Yeah, I think it's the only product with a musical number. I'm pretty sure.
Although, isn't there? I know there's the what is it, College of Opera, and I
That's
think
right. Did she ever record anything to
I
go
don't
with?
know.
Because she
I
was
just
an opera singer,
that's
right?
what I mean. So it feels like there's something there.
Yeah.
But no, so yeah. So I take so the what would you say is the sort of like like your you mentioned the two things. So you mentioned like the new D&D products being a sort of like prompt, and then you also see the actual systems in your home game that sort of encourage you to sort of write something up. What would you say is the sort of the balance of the two? Like, do you sort of tend to lean more one way, or is it as you sort of like?
I think right now it's kind of leaning more towards official products
Mhm.
as props, but that's more situational just because I haven't done anything with the table in a minute that's been as vast as a Here's to Crime system was.
Fair. And so
So
I guess also, so touching on the wacky races, or
yeah,
I'm curious as well. So if not to sort of like pick it apart too much, but what's the
oh,
sort of
sure.
mechanics at play there?
So it's a mix of essentially it was I wanted to run a car chase, but I knew if I did a car chase and we were sitting and measuring distance, like my players were going to get bored just because
Mhm.
we're kind of an abstract table.
Yeah,
And I knew like, oh, I can't sit. Like if we have 8 cars going, I can't sit and figure out the distance for 8 cars. Like I can, but I'm gonna get bored.
yeah,
So it was about like, how can I take a 4E skill challenge system and kind of base that around car placements. So it's not about where the car is in relation to anything else. It's like kind of car stats in relation to where they are with each other. And based on where they are with each other, there's different moves that cars can do. So that's like kind of the base system. But then on top of that, I wrote all these cars, and I meant for it to have a Mad Max feel, but all my players were like, "Ooh, wacky races!" Because one of them was like, there was this hag, and she's basically on like a Baba Yaga house, and the
okay,
house
yeah,
is running.
yeah.
And in my mind, like, oh, like a running house. That's Mad Max, right? Like, no, it's wacky races. You wrote wacky races. Okay, well, I can lean into that. All right.
I think I suppose you need to throw like the words, throw more skulls on there. I'm trying to think of like how you can make it more Mad Max. I don't even know if that helps. No,
But I'm
that
also with the wacky races. Let's do it.
No, I mean, like, I'm sure there's players out there who've just been looking at their, what was it, Descent into Avernus, and just been thinking, this is too dark. We need some levity in here.
Right. Let's get some nonsense going.
Yeah. No. So I get so the I guess the sort of next sort of part of the thing is when you actually sort of sit down and start writing up these projects. Then, is there like a part of the project that you love the most?
Yeah, I think I love in the middle. I can kind of get into a groove
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times in the beginning, like with Shanty, and you're like, oh, I'm writing a pirate thing. It's about a song, and that there was like a good couple. There was like a month where I came up with like 8 different ideas, and I thought they were all going to be in it, and it was a real hassle to get through. But then once I figured out, like, okay, this is the story. I have the story, and in the middle, once I kind of know the story, and I can kind of coast through a bit easier. So
Yeah.
I think the middle chunk I get into a nice groove. So that's always the favorite part.
So I'm mostly curious about when it comes to like writing locations. How like I kind of have like a very sort of structured process where my first stage is always going through and I sort of list all the possible rooms, and then I sort of go through one by one trying to fill the sort of stuff that's in those rooms. Or is that a similar approach? Like I'm curious about like.
The main thing I kind of try to do in locations is I super laser focus on the things that can be interacted with.
Okay.
Like I'm writing one now where the characters are in a museum, and essentially the book is like, here's the 7 or 8 things they can mess with. There's other stuff too, but I don't care. You shouldn't care.
Yeah.
I don't quite put it in those words, but I try to give that vibe. Or if I'm like, or I wrote a village earlier today, and it's like, these 4 buildings have NPCs they can talk to, and plus they can pick up on things they can learn. there's 80 other buildings. I don't care about them. You don't care about them.
Yeah,
They're just
yeah.
there.
I mean, they can go pillaging through them if they want, but that's
Right.
you know, at that point, that's the
Figure it out.
players. Yeah.
And I think even room to room, that's kind of what I go for. Is just here's what they could mess with.
Mm-hmm.
There's other stuff too for flavor, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I think one of my favorite lines is like, I think I've seen it in some D&D books that I've also copied across, is like, if you're in like a house or like I've done like a few villas or mansions, and it's like, okay, yeah, there probably needs to be at least like one like bathroom, and in the bathroom you just put saying there is nothing of value within this room.
Yeah.
There's a bathtub, there's I don't know, like a mirror. That's it. You know,
someone's going to ask about the bathroom, so there it is.
That's how it is. But no, so and I'm curious as well. So sometimes there is the idea of trying to make with at least with adventures, you either have sort of like setting driven content or sort of like I guess it's like character driven content.
Right.
And I imagine with sort of Shanty of Baldbeards. Sorry. Did you feel that it was more like the adventure, so more location to location driven, or was it this character of who Baldbeard is?
I mean, I think because basically that adventure barrels down to 3 locations.
Mm-hmm.
But within those locations, it's very character-based. Because, it starts in, a pirate pop-up tavern.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more about interacting with the characters in the tavern and learning about the song than it is exploring the tavern. We did up a little menu and fill in some details, but it's really interaction-based. And then the second location is Boldbeard's ship. And that whole section is a role-playing encounter where you're trying to incite a mutiny. So I call that more character-driven.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And here's some ways you can kind of mess with them. Here's things they value, and if you poke at it, they're going to get mad. And then the home stretch of it is a dungeon crawl. So I guess the dungeon crawl I would call more location-based, because it's kind of here's a treasure, here's some things that are guarding it, here's some things you can interact with that'll help or hinder you. But really, I think just in terms of setting or character-based, to me, I'm really just trying to write what is the player-facing content here. Because, if you're playing a 2-hour game, and I think a lot of people are, I think the DM really wants, what does the player care about? What can the player interact with? What is the player doing? So I just try to laser focus in on that. What's important to what's moving the story or giving the player something fun they can do.
No, I'm curious. And so I imagine, is that also something that's kind of reflected in I guess, your DM style?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. I found, whenever I would play, I always had the least amount of fun when I felt like the DM had very prescribed actions for us. Mm-hmm. So whenever I DM, and then in my books, too, I'm trying to really push, we're going to create situations where the players can do whatever they want. And I think that's part of why I am pushed into heist stuff so much, is the heist story is really about, how can the player get away with things.
Yeah, and I suppose you literally you give them the end goal, yes. And then that's literally they can and I think as well in the same way of having I guess moments that happen irregardless of if the players are there or not.
Right.
It kind of gives I'm working on something at the moment where a lot of the moments or encounters are kind of two other characters clashing with each other. And if the players happen to be there, or as the players enter the room, they have this sort of encounter that immediately they begin to engage with. Mm-hmm. So it's always interesting to sort of hear how someone else's design process kind of aligns with your own. Okay, so moving on to the less positive side of things. So what would you say is your least favorite part of a project?
The home stretch, the last 5 to 10%, because I feel like mentally I'm done. I wrote it, it's done. Oh, I need to do these edits. Oh, I need to give my layout feedback. Oh, let's figure out the cover. Oh, and I get to that point where I'm just let's just put it out.
Yeah.
And my buddy Louie is my art and layout partner and kind of my sounding board. And there's something he said when we were just emotionally done with Handful of Heist and we just wanted it published. He was we don't want to run a 90-yard sprint and then the last 10 yards
Mm-hmm.
fall over.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we got to stay in it, but I don't like being in it.
So I'm curious then, have you sort of found any ways to sort of, I guess, like, again, you realize that you struggle in this last 10%. Have you found any sort of techniques or things that you have that sort of mitigate that?
No, I have not. So if anybody can help me, please, because I hate it. It's terrible.
Yeah. And I must admit, yeah, it is hard to fight off that sort of almost like new project envy.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone sort of has that list of like, oh, well, I've got these other really cool ideas.
I'm ready for the next thing now.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm done. I guess my main advice is to sign up for collaborations because then someone else does it.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. It's sad. So actually, no, I guess that's a good question to sort of like draw the comparisons between working on, let's say, like a handful of heists to the monster hunts. And I imagine that process is very much like you write something, you hand it off, and then you sort of get your feedback as and when.
Yeah, it is nice to not be involved in that last 10% where, like with Monster Hunts, Val and I just sat down and we divvied up kind of the monsters, and then Val has like a formula that the Monster Hunts are in. So I was like, ooh, I've got a template, I've got my monsters.
Yeah.
Like, so the first chunk where I don't know what I'm doing is kind of taken care of, and it's like, oh, this is only the middle part for writing the story, and then he does the layout and art and everything. This is great.
No, I must admit, I think that's another thing as well. That so was it the product we're working on together? The Runa and Ulfgar's Guide to Big Bad Epic Boss Goblins.
Yes,
Yeah.
That was another one that was super fun to write.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, a template. All right.
Yeah, and so to be on the I guess the managing end. It feels like it feels weird because it feels like you have that last 10% for 4 people.
Right.
Just because it's the case of like, oh, well, I mean, like I could sort of like, relax and take my time with it. But then there's other people who've done hard work kind of waiting for it to sort of go live. No, so I'm curious as well. So have you thought about maybe being a I guess doing a large scale collaboration of your own?
I mean, that eventually I would like to. And originally when I had first, like after Here's to Crime, and I was like, oh, I want to do a handful of heists. I want to do a collection of heists.
Mm-hmm.
My first thought was, oh, I should write some people I like and see if they want to do some.
Yeah.
Then I was like, you know what? This seems like a lot of work. Like my mind went like, I mean, also doing it solo was a lot of work, but collab is like a different kind of a lot of work.
Yeah, no.
That I didn't quite feel up to yet. So I would eventually like to run some big collaborations, but not yet.
Yeah. No, like I said, it definitely seems like you've got like a pattern and stuff like that. At least with the sort of the type of your products and stuff like that, and to sort of like try and take on more or just to sort of anything that sort of messes up the potential groove of things.
Right, yeah, because I feel like I work with my buddy Louis Scaradec on, I call them solo products, but really it's me and Louis.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like we're in a pretty good groove getting our products out, and I think adding, and then I've got time on the side to do collabs, but I think if I added running a collab, I'd either run it with Louis and we both go crazy, or I'd run it without Louis and my stuff with Louis would really take a back seat. So yeah. I don't know that it's happening anytime soon.
Okay, so in fairness, that kind of potentially answers like one of the future questions, which is like if you have a dream project. Mm-hmm. Would you say that would be one, or do you actually have something more in the forefront?
I mean, there's some like vibes for products I want to hit that I haven't done yet. I mean, the big one is I would love for Planescape to open up on the DMsGuild. So that's always in the back of my mind, like, is today the day? Like, every time there's a new product announcement, I'm like lurking. So I would love to write in Planescape. And then the other thing is I would like to do more very high tier adventures. Okay. Because like comic book wise, I'm really into like Grant Morrison and Warren Ellis, where it's very like high concept, sci-fi, superhero, reality altering adventures. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's how I run high level D&D, and I'd love to take that into a module and do some real high level crazy stuff. And that's what's been fun about the collabs, because like I know in our Goblin book, I was like, well, here's a plot hook to what a high level thing would look like. So that scratches a little bit. So
actually, I have a bit of a question. Like so I haven't actually DM'd many sort of high level campaigns. I just haven't had the chance. And I'm curious about like, in your experience, I can't imagine the gameplay being identical. So like take a 5-level party and take like a 15th level party. I can't imagine like them being 2 different games.
I mean, with high level, it's less of a dungeon adventure, and you have to look at it as this is the Avengers, this is the Justice League.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of adventure you're writing. The reason I haven't done much with it yet is right now I feel like I can write a high level adventure for my group, but a high level, like a level 15 my group and a level 15 someone else's group are going to be so drastically different.
Yeah.
So I'm still figuring out like how can I write in a way that's for every level 15 group. And once I've cracked that in my mind, I'm going to put out something big and crazy.
I think the problem I run into is the idea of like writing super high level stuff. Is always a case of like one of the characters may just have wish.
Right. And a lot of the trick is writing, I mean, it's the same principle I have with my low level heist stuff, because what I like about heist adventures is I'm creating a situation where the players are having a lot of control over the environment and they're feeling like they're getting away with a lot.
Yeah.
The feeling of that in the low level for heists is the same as the feeling in the high level, where they're the Avengers of the Justice League. And it really just seems to be like, and what frustrates me in a lot of high level adventures I see is the first chunk of the writing is, here's why they can't do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
I want to write, here's why they should do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Here's how that furthers the story, or here's what happens next when they do that. Here's how that's a success. Here's how that causes a different problem. And I think once I have really keyed into how to do that in a mass audience way, I'll have it.
No, I must admit, it's the sort of thing that I would love to sort of sit down and pick the brain of, I guess, like official D&D adventures who write the sort of like end tier campaign stuff. But
even then, you'll notice in 5th edition, they ignore the high tier quite a bit, because I mean, Mad Mage is the only one that goes to level 20, and that is a confined environment. So
isn't there like special rules within the of things?
Yeah, like the Undermountain, like Halister only allows them to do certain things, and they're very confined, so they're not really affecting the setting. One thing I really liked about 4th edition is 4th edition really leaned into in the adventuring tiers. Like when they hit this level, they're now these planar entities.
Yeah.
They've got to deal with this reality-shattering stuff. And with 4E, I was not crazy about the gameplay of it, but I think the stories and lore helped you figure out how to run high-level adventures. Like if you ever read the 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide 2, there's a whole section in that of like, here's how high-level adventures are run. Okay. A lot of that was like my Bible in terms of playing at home. Like, all right, yes, let's do this. Let's get big. Let's get crazy. But I haven't flipped the switch in my brain to figure out how that works for everybody and not just for my group yet. But I will.
I've always said, yeah, okay. I've got some reading to do. I need to go dig up the find a 4th edition.
Yeah, it's great.
Also, the fact. So again, I've started 5th edition, and that's kind of been my bread and butter. The fact that there's a 4th edition second DMsGuild. Why did they need a second one? What was wrong with the first one?
So the first one, first of all, they messed up a lot of the math.
Okay.
There was a lot of like corrections. Like, they realized like as players got to high level, a lot of the game was like, this is not really working. We need to adjust some things. But it's also like it is a different game in the high level. You know? So like if a Dungeon Master's Guide 1 is about exploring the wilderness and going into dungeons, a Dungeon Master's Guide 2, like the high level, it's a different game, and they got to switch it around, you know.
Jeez. No, so I guess with 4th edition, is that how you got introduced to D&D?
We got in through when I was 11. My best friend's dad kind of co-opted a sleepover and ran Dungeons and Dragons for us. And this would have been like real like early 90s. So for a while we ran from his books, and it was like we had some advanced Dungeons and Dragons books and we had some 2nd edition books, and we didn't know they were different editions, so we were just kind of running from both of them.
Yeah.
But we were 12, we didn't really know. And then that to third to fourth to fifth, and a bunch of systems in between. But I played every edition from our strange pastiche on. Fifth edition is the one we have liked the most. Like, it's been a long time since we've stuck with one system for multiple campaigns now.
Yeah.
But now, once 5e came out, we were like, oh, this is that blend of crunchy and loose that kind of everybody can meet in the middle on. So
it does feel sort of like they've really nailed this sort of accessibility side of.
Oh yeah.
It's sort of so easy to sort of pick up and play.
Because to me, third edition was a little crunchy for me.
Mm-hmm.
Fourth edition was it wasn't that crunchy. I just didn't think it was that fun. There were just too many things going on that like got in the way of what was fun for me. So we just didn't enjoy. I didn't enjoy running it. I think my players maybe liked playing it more than I liked running it. Maybe, I don't know, but fifth edition is pretty rock solid.
Okay, cool. So to sort of bring it back around to creating content on the sort of DMsGuild, then, is there any particular lessons that you kind of wish you knew sooner before we sort of diving in?
Yeah, I wish I'd known sooner how fun the community is, because I know during Here's to Crime and Handful of Heists, like, I was working with Louis, which was fun, but we're also doing the same product from different angles.
Yeah.
He's very like, oh, art, layout, how can it look? How can we make it look interesting? And a lot of the writing just felt very solitary. Like, if I was confused about something, it was also Louis' first book, Handful of Heists. So if we were confused about something, we were just kind of confused together.
Yeah.
It felt very solitary. I didn't really feel like I knew who to go for help if I was stuck with something.
So just to clarify from my side. So did you meet Louis? Is he a friend in your sort of personal life, or did you meet him?
Yeah, he's been a friend forever. Yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
when I was writing Here's to Crime, I posted on my Facebook like, "Hey, I'm trying to put out a DMsGuild thing," and Louis was like, "Oh, let me do a cover."
Yeah.
So we did that, and then we kind of took off from there. Yeah, but I do wish I had known sooner there was a community that could like help if I got stuck. Or even just in general, just lessen kind of the solitude that a lot of writing can feel like sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think obviously with the Facebook group when it was still active, rest in peace. Yeah, but the Discord, honestly, it's all been a very sort of like welcoming experience, and it's like, again, it's consistently growing. I think it was every few days we have a new sort of member join. And yeah, it's. I think you can sort of see it's raising in popularity with the ongoing popularity of D&D, and I think with certain things that have been posted around the DMsGuild recently, I think there'll be more eyes.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm like subtweeting or like so it's Matt Mercer. He's released a new version 2 of his Blood.
The Blood Hunter, right?
Blood Hunter, there you go. I was about to say Bloodmancer, and that really didn't feel right. No, it's I think now's a really good time to be involved in the guild. I'm curious, is there any sort of design lessons you picked up from your earlier products that you kind of wish you'd shifted, or?
Yeah, I mean, with Here's to Crime, I just used homebrewery. And I've got nothing against it. But then once I started doing Handful of Heists and we started doing home brewery for that, I was like, oh, I can't do a lot of what I want to do. Like, we just hit that wall of what we could do with it. And I do look back at Here's to Crime and think, oh, I wish it looked a little nicer. Because my feeling at the time was like, let's put it out. It's rules. It doesn't have to look that good. It just, it's rules. They're going to read it. They're going to play with it. Well, looking back, I was like, oh, I could have made it a little fancy. I could have thrown something in there, but I didn't know, so I just threw it out. And I'm very proud of it, because I think the content in it I'm super proud of, and I'm glad so many people use it in their games.
No, like I said, I think I had a very sort of quick skim read of like some of the sort of feedback, just because it's interesting to sort of dive into the product and like see page for page, but seeing how people are like actively responding to it.
I think it's nice that people kind of jump in. Oh, I had a lot of fun with this. This was cool. Or, oh, I didn't like this. Like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But no, it's also nice to see that you're very sort of you don't leave anyone on read. You're sort of diving in, and you're sort of like responding and engaging. And I think that's kind of how you have to be as a sort of create and stuff like that. You have to be ready to sort of take the
Yeah, and
feedback.
it's also like I appreciate they're checking it out, and I tried to make everything very clear. But if something's not clear, I've thought about it more than they have, so I'm happy to answer questions people have in there.
So I guess I kind of have like two interesting parts. Is that I do notice that the more established I get, or like the more products I sort of begin to work on, the more that I can. So again, my first product I didn't have an editor for, just because I wasn't part of the community yet. I didn't really know anything about it. And now all of my products, without question, I have an editor, and it's given me a chance to work with some really, really amazing people. But I can definitely see myself sort of agreeing with the sentiment that maybe down the line, getting someone involved for layout.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to sort of see that almost like that progression where you sort of like it very much starts off as something that way. You're just like, I'm trying to sort of jamble this by myself, and then you realize that there's so many other people who do small parts of a huge project just sort of so well.
And that was even like with Handful, which was my second book. A lot of that was Louis saying like, "Oh, I think I want to learn some layout stuff. Let's just do it."
Yeah.
So there was that, and if he just didn't have that impulse yet when Here's to Crime came out, and it didn't occur to me that like, I just thought, oh, you either know how to do layout or you don't. You can't like call somebody, right? So,
no, so
I guess I'm on homebrew, like learning how to code this or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's the was it the in fairness, I mean, again, it's another tool that sort of helps people, like again, it's that step up from not to say there's anything wrong, but just like white pages and stuff like that, or just like it's it makes even as a creator, it makes you feel like, oh, this you could put this side by side with like a official like D&D thing, and if they're squinting.
Yeah, definitely. with Handful, I was like, hey, this looks really cool, and then this looks way better than my other did. And then when we put Shanty out, I remember looking at what Louis did and my feedback on it, was thinking like, oh, this is actually nice. Like layout isn't just like a thing to put out; it's something you take pride in. So it's just nice when you go, oh, I'm proud of how that book looks.
So I'm curious. So given that you've worked with Louis like again and again throughout these projects and stuff, has it sort of been kind of interesting to sort of watch or work consistently with the same person again and again, and sort of watch again their layout skills develop, and in turn, the sort of content you're.
Oh yeah, and it's also fun because then my writing influences, like his artistic goals kind of influence my writing goals, because we wrote after I put out Handful of Heist, and he had drawn a bunch of maps for that, and then I was like, oh, I think next we'll do a pirate thing, and then we went, yeah, I want to draw some NPCs for the next one. So then that became the obligation. He was like, all right, let's try to write some like interesting characters. Nice. It would be fun to look at and fun to draw. So then kind of his ambitions influence the writing, and then sometimes my writing will influence his ambitions and that kind of thing.
Oh. It's awesome. It's nice to see that, especially as well, being able to work with a best friend in a situation that doesn't go explode or result in a lawsuit or So yeah, okay. So sort of keeping on these sort of, you mentioned like again something you wish you knew sooner was the sort of engagement with the community. Now that you're sort of involved in the community and getting involved in collaboration and stuff like that, who is someone in the community that sort of inspires you?
I'm very inspired by Oliver Clegg. Like, just I haven't talked to him a bunch, but just from reading his stuff, there's a few things I find very impressive. One thing I'm trying to kind of bring into my work is I love how much his personality comes through, because I feel like a lot of adventures don't necessarily feel like anybody wrote them. They just like appeared as adventures, and you don't really have a clue to the personality behind them. But when you read especially his kind of campy concept stuff, you're just like, oh, I get a feel for his sense of humor. I feel like his personality has come through in the writing.
Like was it Killer Kobolds?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stuff like Killer Kobolds or that 50-foot bikini werewolf.
Yeah.
Like you read that and go, okay, I think I have an idea of who wrote this. Like their personality is coming through on their side. And also, I really appreciate his Ravenloft stuff, just because I know there's a lot of debate over kind of second edition Ravenloft. Like, oh, some parts of it are questionable, some parts of it are dated, there's some problems with it. And I think one way to make the argument against that is just to argue, but arguing only has so much effectiveness. But I feel like Oliver has made the argument by just putting out material correctly.
Yeah.
And I feel like just having good versions of that material make the argument better than just putting out a blog about it. So I feel like there was like a purpose to that writing that I think elevates it beyond some other writing that you see.
I think yeah, it's definitely that case of like, you know, so many conversations just like, oh, this is wrong with this. This is like, and someone's like, well, okay, you could do something about it. And
right, yeah,
Oliver is very much sort of
and doing something about it makes the argument more than just making the argument does. I think.
And I think again, I have no envy for the idea of tackling some of the problematic themes within, you know, Ravenloft. And it's interesting, especially being within the DMsGuild, there is very much a push for writing Forgotten Realms content. Yes. And if you're writing Forgotten Realms content, you kind of have to use the, you know, the lore, the world as it is, and sometimes that can be challenging.
Yes.
So I think the closest thing I can have now is I wanted to include an NPC from Waterdeep Dragon Heist in something that I'm working on. Mm-hmm. But the NPC in Dragon Heist is very racist. Like I hate, like it's what is it? So
like
it's
like he's a racist character or something about how he is portrayed.
So he is a so he's a racist character. Okay. So he is a drow who one of Jarl Axel's lieutenants, mm-hmm. and he spends his day doing whatever Jarl Axel wants, and spends his night hunting elves.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and and it's, I don't know, it is challenging because I want to include this character in, but he's so unredeemable, and trying to write content that involves this character is, and again, so that's only almost like a microcosm of whatever is going on with, like, you know, if every part of the lore is embedded in this,
right?
Yeah. Again, yeah, don't envy him. Not my job.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to the people who are more qualified, or at least, you know, have that sort of, you know, argument to put forward.
Right.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That's I must admit, that's not quite where I thought that conversation was going to go. But it's out now. It's recorded, and now we're back. Cool.
We're back. Hello. It's good to be back.
Yeah, brief technical difficulties aside. But what's great is anyone listening or watching, seamless.
Oh yeah, they'll never know.
Unless I leave in all, you know, or a minute of just me sat here.
I think you should. Let's do it. We'll put that Monty Python intermission music over it.
But no, so before that, we were literally chatting about what you're working on at the moment, and you mentioned that you're working on was it a Handful of Heist 2 for Baldurs Gate and Waterdeep?
So Handful of Heist was Waterdeep. So then part 2 was going to be so 2 was going to be Baldurs Gate. Mm-hmm. So I like the idea of giving whatever city you're playing in some chance to kind of sow some mischief and run around a little.
How have you find writing within Baldurs Gate? Obviously, it being
it's fun. I really liked the gazetteer they put in Avernus. I actually think it was their best gazetteer in terms of setting up adventure hooks and setting up stories.
I felt like every location just had a little something.
Yeah, because so many gazetteers can be kind of dry, and you feel like the exciting thing has already happened in the city. And you're just learning about it. But I feel like the Baldur's Gate Gazetteer was really like, there's a lot of stuff to get into in this city. There's a lot of conflicting personalities to play with, a lot of story hooks. That could put a couple vaults in there for me. So
there's one little docs that springs to mind.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So do you think it will sort of follow the trajectory of the next sort of D&D release, or I know there's Neverwinter. There's also Port Nyanzaru. I don't know if there's any interesting heist locations there.
Yeah, I need to take a look. I am a big fan of Neverwinter because I grew up in the generation where the Neverwinter Nights video games
of course.
Were kind of big for us. So it would be not as big as Baldur's Gate 2 was. So Baldur's Gate is very exciting to write in, but Neverwinter would be good. And then if one day we get Planescape, I think do, like Handful of Heist Sigil is like the dream.
Yeah. No, I'm curious. I think the only sort of I've read bits and bobs about Planescape and Sigilled. It seems like, again, it being a donut city.
Yes.
It's very, very, very interesting. And also, what is it? It's got a fair few modrons in it, which I'm all about.
And lots of strange concepts. Lots of there's so much to play with in Sigil. One day.
They have to do a product eventually. They can't keep holding out.
You'd think that, but
we say on repeat as we rock back and forward. They can't. They have to. They have to
do it. They'll do it.
Nice. But yeah, so that is again, not to push you on a date, but are we thinking like, a Q2, maybe like a Q3 release on that?
We're trying to get it out next month, so we'll see.
Okay.
But we're in crunch mode a little bit on it. I always need to add a couple months because then layout and final edits take more out of us than I suspect. But
yeah,
we're closing in on Handful of Heist 2.
Nice. And I believe this has been announced, but quote me if I'm wrong. There are more hunts in the works.
Yes, we've got Legendary Hunts Coastal with me and Val, a bunch of other people too, and that's actually going to be print on demand, which I'm super excited about. It's got a bestiary. The past monster hunts have been hunting already existing creatures, but for this we have new monsters. So you get new monsters, you get a bestiary, you get a quest to fight them, you get the items that these monsters give you. And it's fun because the quests are longer than the quests are in Monster Hunt. There's just more room to play. And I wrote 3 kind of longish quests for them that are all pretty different in tone and style, which was fun for me too.
So I take it the moment it sort of comes out. Do you? I'm curious because I've not been involved in a print on demand product. Do you have to buy the print on demand for your own product?
I actually don't know, and I'm scared to ask. So.
I think you probably would. Like, I think I know you can buy your own products, and I don't think they would just. Who knows?
Yeah,
it would be nice to get a free one.
Maybe a cost or something, or maybe it'll be a heist. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And so again, has the release date for that been announced, or is it sort of?
I know it's in layout, but print in demand adds some layout concerns.
Yeah.
So I know poor Val is doing many a sleepless night trying to get this thing done. So.
No, I can't imagine. No, that's also. It sounds like especially some very sort of exciting things on the horizon. I guess like the main sort of question is like if people are curious about the sort of stuff that you're working on, how can they find out?
Just track me down on Twitter, because right now I'm not good at Twitter, so it's basically only promotes my things because I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to be doing with it. So
I think just like the occasional meme.
Yep,
I think just
follow me and I will like your meme.
Nice. Oh, there you go. That's a sales pitch if I've ever heard one.
Take that deal to the bank. That is done.
No, honestly, I must admit, I don't know if there's anything other topics that you feel like you'd like to sort of touch on and stuff like that. But I feel like we've had a quite a well-rounded, lovely discussion.
I mean, I feel like we've mostly just talked about me. How are you?
Oh, shucks. I'm really bad at it. End the podcast listing all the things wrong with me. No, things going all right. Exciting things in the works. I think it's a case of where I've got a few things that I sort of managed to sort of weasel my way in collaborative wise. I'm involved in the Unbridled, which is
nice, that looks fun.
The combination of hags and unicorns, or hags riding unicorns, or in some cases unicorns I'm sure unicorns riding hags. Yeah, it's not an image I want in my head, but it's out there now, and
I know now. There it is.
I know someone in the adventure's probably written all about it. So that's. I think again it was an interesting challenge just to sort of be that sort of bombastic. So that's in the works. Obviously the Runa and Ulfgar's guide to big boss epic goblins, which I think I've said different
people to read that.
Yeah, I think I've said it differently every time. Just call it the Big Egg.
Goblin book.
The acronym does make it easier. That should be out this month, maybe. No, so yeah, we're literally as of today we've got the artist starting. So yeah,
nice.
That's what exciting. I'm still working on a sort of side product. I'm still planning on killing Volo.
Nice.
That's
get him.
He's literally. I've killed him 3 times. I just need to finish the 4th time, and then I think that's it. Once you kill him the 4th time, that's his phylactery gone.
That's when it sticks. Yeah.
But no, yeah. So I'm yeah. It's thank you for asking, Jimmy. That's very nice.
Oh yeah, no problem. I worry.
Yeah. But yeah, no. I guess that's I think just about pretty much all we have time for. I say that not having timed this, but it emotionally feels it feels like we've had. But yeah, and yeah, I have been Matthew Whitby. You can find me at Whitby Writes. This has been Jimmy Meritt, my amazing guest. Thank you once again for joining me. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. Nearly any time. Again,
I always take you up on that. Next week, I'm back.
Next week,
same answers.
Jimmy, the eternal guest.
Yes, I've got nowhere else to go.
We can adopt you. That's fine.
There we go. Nice.
But yeah, no, yeah. So be sure to tune in next week. I don't know who's going to be the guest next week. It'll be surprise. It'll be surprise to us all. But yeah, and actually, yeah. Here's the final question, Jimmy. How do you end a podcast?
You pretend there was some kind of technical difficulty and then abruptly cut it off.
Just abruptly cut midway through sentence, like right now.